All right, everybody, welcome to the B2B Growth Lab. Today we are hanging out and chatting, in the end about loyalty. Now, that's a really loaded word. I'm sure we can unpack all sorts of ideas and impressions and concepts behind it. But really, the key, the title, the core of today's episode is how do you get that loyalty in before the sale? And I love this quote. It may become a cliche. I'm going to use it so much. The business that gives the most value wins. So I guess one of the remarkable questions that we could try to answer today, or the mystery of the ages, is, how do you do that up front? How do you give so much value that people are just banging your door down saying, how do I come in? How do I do business with you? How do I work for you even? So I think this stuff is really at the core of a brand. And I love the idea that we're dealing with this because so many businesses are hyper focused on the sale. I was speaking with a colleague earlier today, just a guy I've done some work in parallel with, and that's his company. He goes out and finds people to do sales for you, and even he is frustrated with how obsessed people are with the sale, with closing the deal, instead of about creating loyalty for that employee that they spend a ton of money having him go and find and then potentially risk losing because all they care about are the metrics and not the person behind them. So it's a noisy environment out there. It's a competitive market out there. And I believe how you design the touch points really determines the long-lasting relationship and therefore the lifetime value of that customer.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's start picking this apart. That was a long-winded intro, but anything that came up already?
Well, there are a couple of things that came up for me. The first thing that came up for me was this idea of listening. And what I mean by that is obviously we're talking about in the context of building loyalty before the sale. And I was reviewing some sales calls. So part of the work that I do is I help companies answer one really important question, which is, why do high intent prospects still walk away, right? And so I was reviewing this sales call, and I noticed that the prospect brought up something that really mattered to them. And it mattered enough that they brought it up twice, but it was just in passing, right? Because this was a first conversation. They're not going to say, this really matters to me, but they're still going to send out signals. And the salesperson didn't catch that signal. And so it meant that the sale couldn't move forward because it mattered that much to the prospect. And so listening is really vital here. And it's listening for what is the issue beneath the issue that they're bringing up, because that's the weightier issue that could stall the sale, just like it did on this call. And so I think that learning how to listen, and it's not just like listening and not scripting. That's way too passive, right? It's like listening, empathizing, mapping out implications of things. It's actually a very complex skill once someone learns how to navigate it.
That's brilliant. The image that came to mind when you were speaking there was like having a trailer and no hitch.
Oh yeah.
Right. And that makes so much sense. Something else that you kind of brought to mind, it's an exercise that I love. I got it from Jeb Blunt, and they call it a murder board. And I think that's from they have the movies with the crime scene investigation, all the pictures and evidence start to go together.
The red twine.
Yeah, exactly. And he says that what they do is get the entire sales team together and keep going until everybody's exhausted of what could kill this sale. So that anticipatory stuff shows up. And I think maybe that's how super high performers learn how to listen, because they have a checklist of like all the stuff that should be listened for in the beginning, right? Whereas that call that you were reviewing was more of a basic thing of just like lacking the listening exercise instead of knowing these are the 36 things that kill a sale. And I guess they forensically dig into this for every single sales process.
And I really like that, because strategy isn't supposed to be reactive. Strategy is supposed to be anticipatory. And I think that that's what it's highlighting here is this. I'm anticipating what could be going wrong with this sale. I'm anticipating all of that. And then I'm listening tactically in the moment for what someone could say or not say about a sale that could derail things, because that really matters. I think another thing is, and this goes along with that murder board concept, or at least the process of implementation, which is, does your sales team really understand your customer? And what I mean by that is, I've said this a million times and I'll keep saying it. Your customers don't buy your product or service. They hire it to make progress in their life. They want an outcome. I don't buy a hot dog because I think a hot dog's cool. I buy a hot dog because I want to eat a hot dog. I want something that'll fill me up. Maybe there's some emotional and social implications that are going on there as well. And unless the hot dog company understands that, or the hot dog cart or the restaurant or whatever, unless they understand that, then the best that they can do is, hey, try our hot dogs. They're delicious. But if you can understand, hey, Zach only buys hot dogs when he's doing a neighborhood barbecue. So then we start doing advertising that shows why our hot dogs work best for neighborhood barbecues, why people bond over hot dogs and stuff like that. Like, that's when you can start really closing sales, because now you're speaking not to features and benefits, but you're speaking to outcomes. And this is a very common problem that sales and marketing teams fall into, I find. Because what happens is in general business strategy, and Jacob, if you've seen this, let me know. But what I've observed in general business strategy is they tell you to do one thing. They say, go find a core competency and then build a castle around it and make sure no one can get it. And then you start sending out little feelers and colonies in different areas that you think are neat. The problem with that is that it's very inwardly directed. And as businesses get more and more mature, you can see them make a switch in their marketing when they go from, we are no longer a David competing against a Goliath. We are now the Goliath. You can see a switch. It's really interesting, because they start advertising based off of features and benefits and general public trust. And it's all, look at us. We're the best. We're so great. And it's not focused on you and your problem and the outcome you want to create. And it causes a lot of problems for these companies later down the line because of that same we're building a castle, we're defending it. It causes problems down the line because they no longer see new market entrants who, because of advancing technologies, they don't need to lay siege to this castle. All they have to do is go around it. They outmaneuver, and all of a sudden the castle is irrelevant.
Yeah, no, that was really rich. There was a lot of really important points in there. One of the things, let me see if I can draw a parallel here, because I've been reflecting on this as well. So we built something recently around an automation that we already have, right? And it's called the response engine. Now, the original thing was a direct platform-based automation that can ask for a review, right? And that's the baseline. And this is the kind of stuff that I think we're talking about, because if you don't make these things evolve, they become irrelevant, is my point, right? So we already had an in-house automation, which was how did we do? Not please give us a review. How did we do? And if you hit the slider on 5, it takes you to the give a review automation, right? And if it's a 4 or less, it goes to how could we do better?
Mm-hmm.
If you wish, here's a link to book a 15-minute call.
Mm-hmm.
So it went from, tell us we did great to we care about what you think. And that's what we had sitting. And then I met the CEO of this company recently. And what they're doing isn't miraculous. It's just smart. But their platform takes you to a branded landing page, your brand, right? So 5 minutes after I buy from Zach, and we go through the how did we do thing, if it's a 5, it takes you there and it'll just capture video. So you get a video testimonial, which is obviously better than a text testimonial, but that was their offer. The CEO and I sat down yesterday, actually, and we kept on talking and talking and talking and talking. And we found 17 different touch points where it's useful to send a link and say, give us a video and tell us how we're doing. And we talked about that in leads, and then in the conversion space, and then in the steps that lead up to the sale, like that call that you were on where that person can say, you know what? I felt like the key point to me was ignored, right? And we mapped out 17 different spots where that feedback could be solicited. And that was the most interesting thing about the exercise. Like, the idea of there's this tool prompted the scenario in the exercise, but the process was this whole exploration of like, what would it be like to be involved with a business that cared and asked questions every single step of the way, right?
Yeah.
Before we even try and sell you what's on your mind. And I just think there's a huge amount of potential with how easy it is for us to get back and forth and be in communication with each other, that we can all do 100 times better than a text or a DM or that's like just following up.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that I really love about what you're saying is what you're highlighting is what consultative sales really should be. And a lot of businesses claim to be a consultative sales organization, but they're really not. And here's what I mean. Consultative sales is all about really listening to the prospect to say, hey, do you actually have a need for what we do? Because if you do, we're probably the best solution out there. And here's why, right? And if not, I'll tell you why there's a better solution out there for your particular problem.
Mm-hmm.
But it's completely focused on that prospect and helping them make progress. And the problem is that people say we're consultative sales, but they don't really mean it, right? Because they're going through the form of it without having the actual intent of helping a person solve a problem. And I have a mentor who drilled this into my head. He said, Zach, doing business is the privilege of helping other people solve problems for money.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're completely self-focused, me, I, let me tell you why I'm the best solution, instead of saying, hey, let me understand what your problem is, then you haven't even earned the right to tell them why you're the best solution. And it completely shifts things when you stop focusing on yourself and start focusing on them and their problems.
Yeah. And it's so incredibly powerful for your brand. And I think there are a bunch of industries, like you said, that are masquerading as doing that. But there's very few I've come across so far that actually practice it. There's a couple guys I met recently working for different organizations, but they have the role of MSPs, managed service providers.
Yeah.
And that's one of the few places I've seen it where they're like, we don't get paid for making any recommendations. We have this menu of 400 different things, and our job is to find a fit. And, you hear the find a fit conversation all over the map, right? Like, let's assume the company that you were reviewing the sales call for was a consultative selling process. And there you are, like, yeah, but your team isn't listening to the preemptive objection of this is the one thing I care about. which if was dealt with would probably start building the trust before the sale occurs, right? Because you want to, before there's spender's remorse, there's buyer's remorse, right? There's all that.
And I just want to add to that, because buyer's remorse happens when the expectation does not match the reality of their experience, right? So when we're selling, we're out here saying, rah, rah, we're the best, we can solve all these problems. But unless we actually live up to that, then they're going to get buyer's remorse and they're going to walk away. And that's why so many brands have such high customer turnover, right? And if you did consultative selling properly and correctly, you would have much lower customer turnover and much higher customer satisfaction, because you'd be very well aware of the problems that they had from the get-go, and you would either select them in or sort them out based off of what they need. And it wouldn't be this I'm going to get a sale just to get a sale so that I can have a higher bonus.
Right. Right. Which is what that sales source, that sales exec that, like, I'll find the perfect salesperson for your team. That's what he was telling me he's dealing with on a daily basis, right? Where they're even treating the salespeople that way. Like, I just want this like killer who will come in and Rambo their way through my business, as if that's going to solve all the problems. Right?
And that, it's scary.
We have a different definition here, or we might, that I wanted to clean up first, though. So for me, the way I language it is every single person has remorse. And so I think it's just split even 50-50. I don't think there's a personality type or any category to it. But what I find is 50% of people have what I call buyer's remorse, meaning they're doubtful about the buying decision. And so they're the ones that'll spend 20 hours researching the purchase of a 1-hour solution, right? Like, burn all that upfront energy. And, again, they could have solved the problem 20 times by the time they make that buying decision, right? This could be a donut. It doesn't have to be a new car.
Yeah.
And then for me, the spender's remorse are the other side of those people who then spend the next 20 hours after purchase trying to figure out if they made the right decision. And so part of what I try to do is, like, how do we solve that and rescue those people from themselves? Because
that's an interesting question. That's a really interesting question to me, because you're right. I traditionally will define those differently. I've never considered the concept of a seller's remorse before. That's something I'm going to have to think more on. But I do think you're right that people will spend a long time post-purchase wondering, did I make the right choice? Did I do the right thing? And I think that it's kind of kissing cousins with this idea of, is my experience matching up with the outcome that I wanted? And the reason why they're having that question is because sales didn't do its job. See, or copy, both. Right. Because I think that sales and marketing have to do three things for a customer. One, they have to better understand or express the problem than the customer can. Two, they have to better understand and express the solutions available to the customer on the table to solve the problem. Three, they have to give that customer or prospect insights that they couldn't get anywhere else. When you do that, you build the level of trust necessary so that a customer can walk in and say, yes, I made the right decision. And when those kinds of sales happen, you don't get the buyer's or seller's remorse, because I made the right choice. These were the available options. The guy even brought some ideas I hadn't even considered. He helped me see, and we walked through why those weren't the best options, why this one was. And I'm very confident now in my decision. But when people get that I guess you'd call it spender's remorse.
Yeah.
When people get this spender's remorse, I think it's because they don't feel like they've done enough due diligence, and they feel like they haven't thought through the problem and all of the available solutions. And so they're still thinking through it on the back end, and it's just taking the form of questioning, did I make the right decision? Because what about all of these other available options that I didn't even consider that I'm now considering?
Yeah. I look at it a little differently because the way I formulate it is just we're all crazy. Like
Mhm.
all human beings, 2 feet in a heartbeat, we're crazy. So it's just a matter of what kind, right? Because for me, the math of it has a lot to do with the time, right? Like, so I have a like 2 hour travel option,
Mhm.
whether it's a flight or
Mhm.
a train, I need to make it. And then I'll spend 16 hours trying to find the cheapest ticket or the right time, of which, like, if I just worked for 8 hours, I could change that from a train ticket to a first class flight,
Right.
right? So it's just that sunk cost, opportunity cost. Like we have really disproportionate understandings of that already. And so I just assume everybody's going to go through some sort of a crisis when they make a buying decision. It's just whether it's going to happen up to the transaction or after.
Yeah.
And I try to think of things that way because I've observed it in my own behavior even. And it adds so much stress to daily life, I think. Like Dan Pink wrote a great book about it, about the paradox of choice. And in his TED talk, he did this permutation. Like I walked into my local supermarket, I did the math on all the dressings, and it was in the thousands because of the combinations of premixed or oils and vinegars you could put together. He's like this is too much thinking for any human being to do about what to put on a salad, right? And they're like, it's our brains can't handle this stuff, and I think that really is important because your comment about features and benefits is about shoving more in front of them instead of taking things away and
Yeah.
making it simpler and clearer and removing information, facts, ideas, touch points. And if you can do that well, in my opinion, then you're serving them really well.
And that's consultative selling. And
Mhm.
that's the kind that builds loyalty, right? Because I think fundamentally you come into a sales conversation and you kind of know the options that are on the table, at least some of them. You don't know all of them likely. And so you're trying to figure out which of these best fit my situation. I'll give you an example. So I had to buy a new car recently,
Mhm.
and I kind of knew fundamentally, okay, what are the options on the table? But I had to really stop and sit and think about, okay, but what are actually the options on the table? What's in my budget? What can I get? What can I negotiate at? Things like that. And so I think that the thing that helped me the most was sitting down with a friend who's really good at buying cars and just saying, hey, I need another fresh pair of eyes on this to walk through
Right.
this situation to understand like what are my options. And that's consultative selling. Well, okay, let's talk. This is your problem, right? And have you considered this and this? Because these go along with that problem. And then, well, these are your potential options to solve that problem now or to get the outcome of not having that problem anymore. And have you considered these as well? And this is why those don't work. This is why these might work, but probably not as good as this last option. And this option works because da 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 da. And so I think that what you're actively doing is you're doing consultative selling is you're saying this is your problem, these are all your options, now let's start taking them away until you're left with three, because now you have to choose. I can't choose for you at that point, but you have a pretty good grounding in what the problem is, what you need from a solution, why some solutions work, why others don't, and the trade-offs that are involved here. And now, once we can start talking trade offs, well, then I can tell you exactly why my solution is better than Bob's solution down the street because of these trade offs. If you value X more than Y, go with Bob. If you value Z more than A, go with me.
Yeah. And like I'm curious about this. How much while you're going through that process is it rolling in the back of your mind and which of these will fit my family and keep them safe? Right.
Oh,
While you're weighing budget and then these other things on the surface.
yeah. And which are going to be reliable and,
Yeah.
those are the trade-offs that salespeople need to be aware of as well. That's part of giving insights into that decision that they can't get anywhere else, right? Because it's talking about, okay, well, so you've got a small family, you probably are aware of this, but have you considered this as well? This vehicle might work better than that vehicle because it's actually got wider seats, and the anchors for car seats, it's easier to get to the anchors so you don't have to spend all that time fumbling around. Oh, no, I hadn't even considered that before.
Right.
And this actually has a side impact rating that's a lot higher because, and this matters because did you know that most infant fatalities in a car accident happen in a side impact instead of in a T-bone? No, I didn't know that. Oh, okay, yeah. Well,
Right.
this is why it matters. See, now you're positioning yourself as a consultant in that conversation, as someone who is a trusted source of expertise.
Right. And pulling off the wall menu of features, the few that really make a difference.
And that's those trade-offs, right? And so then
Right.
and those features, right, the features only matter because it creates the end result that I'm looking for. And so those features, you push that button of that feature related to the end result, not for the sake of the feature.
Right. I keep going back to, I swear, I think it was Claude Hopkins. Like, this book was written in the early 1900s. This is the guy apparently who, like, came up with the idea of painting a picture of a pie on the side of a train car.
Okay.
And in the book, there's this section, if I'm remembering it correctly, and it's the right book, but the conversation is basically about how a box of aspirin, like, the logo was this tiny little invisible thing in the corner, and on the box it said headache tablets, which, if you get headaches, is so relevant. And they did such a good job of it that one day aspirin became the thing, right? But it wasn't about aspirin. It wasn't pushing that feature. It was, right, what's your pain? What's your pain? What's your pain? And getting that pain up front. And they
Right.
focused on nothing on it until the brand strength was just so strong.
Well, and the thing that I love about that example is it's the headache tablet. I always associate this product with it. I have a headache, I take this tablet.
Mhm.
And I can't remember which guy said it, and I should, but he says he was a Harvard professor of marketing, actually. And he says, always remember that your customer doesn't want a quarter-inch drill. They want
Right.
a quarter-inch hole.
Right.
And that matters, but you go further down. Okay, so why do they want a quarter-inch hole? Do they want to hang a picture? Are they doing woodworking to join a piece of furniture together? Like, what do they need that quarter-inch hole for? Because now features are going to be dictated by that, and the features that you highlight are going to be dictated by that. And I think that we often forget that because we get so wrapped up in the systems that we can create. And I have to be careful the way that I say this because I know that you're a big systems guy.
No, that's
But
fair.
but the systems, we get so wrapped up in the systems that we can create and the level of intricacy that our marketing systems can take. A/B testing, focus groups, diverse marketing channels, and we're sending out all this noise. We're screaming all the time, but
Mhm.
is it actually saying anything that people care about or is worth hearing? The answer is probably not,
Yeah.
because we're so focused on just pumping out content, pumping out content, pumping out content, getting in front of eyes. But are you actually saying anything?
I agree. And there's actually a great case study that ties into the whole headache thing, because there's some really interesting research done, years later, much more recently. There are basically three big players in the market. And one of them doubled down on the feature type thing that you're pointing towards, to such a degree that they lost market share. And when they went out and talked to their audiences, people were like, oh, well, it says it's for severe pain, right? And it got, like, to be this thing that was such a specialized pain relief that although it was right next to the other headache tablets, everybody looked at it and like, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that severe. I'm not suffering that much. I don't need this, because all of their commercials and stuff had gone towards this niche, right? Of like 8, 9, 10 out of 10 pain or nothing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of shoot, I had it and then I lost it. It'll come to me, but generally this idea of, oh, this is what it was. It was Google. It makes me think of Google. So when Google first came on the map, they were a search engine, and people loved Google because it made searching the internet easier, right? And when you boil it down, the actual job that they were trying to create, or the outcome they were trying to create, was getting answers to questions easier.
Right.
And somewhere along the line, Google forgot. Google doesn't mean that anymore. Google doesn't mean easier answers to questions. It doesn't mean doing the internet easier. Google is just some amorphous blob in our minds now. And so what happened? Well, about 2 years ago, ChatGPT came on the scene, and now that is the exact job that people use ChatGPT to do. About I don't know what the stats would be on that, but it's quite often.
Yeah, it's shifting a lot, and it's because of that, right? Google did get so Google centric that, you know, the marketing joke is the best place to hide a dead body is on page 2.
Yeah,
because of exactly that, it started to care more about how it was selling the search to the, you know, paid search providers and not serving the customer.
right.
Right.
Well, because I mean, look at this. Like, Facebook had an LLM that came out before ChatGPT called Llama, but it was so difficult to use that people didn't use it. And it was kind of, if I recall, it was like a leak that came out, but it was difficult to set up. So people didn't use it. It wasn't until ChatGPT came out and made that generative LLM easier to use that people started adopting it. And Google had that technology available as well. They just didn't roll it out because they didn't think my job is to help people answer questions easier. They thought my job is to make people pay money to get on page 1 of Google, top 3.
Yeah,
That's what they thought.
Absolutely. And I was doing some research for a campaign for a client. They're a voice AI supplier. The earliest case study I could find of AI, and it was 250 like large companies that were, you know, polled and had this research done. But that publication of how AI is going to affect business, it's like 14 years old. So, you know, this isn't something that happened yesterday or the 2 years ago that we all, you know, shifted and put our eyes on it. It's been, you know, in the works for decades.
Well, I mean, 30 years ago, Ray Kurzweil was writing books.
Yes.
That were about this as well. It's what we're seeing this place where the technology is catching up with what has been anticipated. And because a lot of people haven't been paying attention, they don't know what to expect. And I think that we're going to see this impact sales as well, because I think that AI could do a pretty darn good job at consultative selling if you train it to do the right thing, but it will miss that human touch if you're not aware of that. So I think that we're entering a strange new world.
Yeah, I agree. And as we start wrapping this up, I think another thing to touch on, since we, you know, ended up with AI, is be wary of it as a feature. Because, you know, it's the thing now, if it doesn't have the AI sticker on it, and that doesn't mean it's functional, it serves its purpose, it does its job well, it just means it has it. And, you know, that shouldn't be the thing that reinforces your buying decision either.
Right. I really like that. I think that that's really insightful, because everyone is schlepping an AI sticker on something today, but it's meaningless. It's meaningless. honestly, like we've had artificial intelligence for a long time. Like I was playing RTS video game, real-time strategy video games back in like 2003 that had artificial intelligence involved.
Right.
It's just the level of sophistication that we have now and what we're able to do with it. And so it's like, yeah, every product, probably not product, but every software probably has some layer of artificial intelligence involved in it, but it's not what you're thinking it is. And so anybody could schlep that sticker on their website and say, yeah, we have AI, but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And the other thing, that just adding to what you're saying about beware of that AI as a feature, that's really important, because look at when ChatGPT first came out, how many entrepreneurs came out trying to score a quick buck, and they made a specialized ChatGPT that and tried to market it, that was like, oh, we're the ChatGPT for planning your vacations, we're the ChatGPT for planning your health issues, right? And now the modern ChatGPT can just do all of that for you. And
Yes.
so because they weren't focused on, we help people X, no one knows about, geez, whatever it is that helps me plan my vacation, because I'll just use ChatGPT to do that.
Yes. Yeah. Very well said. I was kind of visualizing it when you're speaking about it, and it's like every old school manual can opener has a bottle opener on it, right? But how many people go and get it to open a bottle, right? Like it's just this feature that somebody thought should be built in from the beginning that I'm sure, never gets any mileage.
Yeah.
People rather use 15 other devices, including dedicated bottle openers that are sitting in that drawer. And yeah, it's a funny thing right now. If you do slap an AI sticker on it, it's somehow shiny and upgraded just in case.
Well, and it's so interesting to me, going back to that features conversation, because it's like we actively make fun of commercials from the 50s that are like
Yes.
just focused on features, like, look, this is an electric can opener and it can walk your dog and it can blah blah blah. Like we make fun of that.
Yeah.
And we think we're above that, but we do the same thing today. We focus entirely on feature sets. We don't focus on the outcome. Hey, if you want to open a can, this is the thing that you use. This is the best can opener. And you buy one and you'll never need another can opener again, because it's made out of space shuttle grade titanium. Like it's
Right.
never going dull. Like, okay, now we can have a conversation, because that titanium matters, because I just want to buy one can opener and never buy another one.
Right.
So,
and so fortunately it has some sort of GPS in it as well. And you'll never lose it.
so the government can track you when you're opening cans.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah. Well, as always, Zach, I really appreciate your time. And, thanks for getting in here and digging in the conversation and seeing where it goes. And yeah, I'll see you next week for more of the same.
I look forward to it. And I really appreciate you taking the time to set these up. It's very enjoyable for me.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much.